and then I'll just kind of see if these actually showed up. Hey, I think we're live. That was like a minimum of technical issues.
Joe.
Yeah. Let the heckling begin. So what I was thinking, Ryan, is it looks like there's just a couple of us on here. Is we'll give it a few seconds and then we'll kind of maybe introduce it. Looks like Kaylin has a question. What I was thinking is we could kind of use this as a run through for IBS.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to kind of skip screens. And if these actually download, which they should. Okay. And I got the notification that it did go live. So I'm going to download these. So when it comes to, oh, I see what it's doing. That's super annoying. When it comes to IBS, we're going to have a total of 30 minutes. I don't know if they're introducing us or what the situation might be. Okay, so these are working. So I didn't know if we should just kind of assume and start at the very beginning. Let me just copy these into Drive. And then I can always show the calculator videos. But I guess my question for you, if we were to present this to somebody that has never is like maybe a framer, but they haven't done a lot of hand cut. Maybe they've just done trusses and they know where would you train somebody that came to work for you that had some years as a framer, but mostly was on a truss roof?
Oh, I think we would go to the basics, and we would probably start with the plan, the blueprint, the roof plan, and the elevations, just to see how they're, how many pitches are involved, what fascias, line up, what overhangs are the same projection, things like that, and then move into some of the stuff that you've shared with, using the calculator and how to actually determine, the length, the hypotenuse of the triangle that essentially is the rafter, using the terms that we use, run and rise, diagonal, things like that.
Okay, so I'm going to share. We dug up, let's see, window. This is the PDF program. Add to stage. So this, I'm just going to back this up real quick. We built this house back in 2013. And if I zoom out, it's extremely basic. For some reason, every time we get these scans or these plans scanned, they end up being just massive.
Yeah.
Okay, so super straightforward. Is all 612 roof, like the little front was a 412 over the front of the garage, just like really basic.
Yeah.
And I think this is the last time I framed a hip roof. I think. We did a little one that had like a hip over the garage back in 2019. But then here, this was like the full hip roof. So when I wrote the article for JLC, this was the one that's in all the pictures.
Yeah, that's very similar to the one we just did yesterday. Minus the gables. We didn't have any gables.
No gables?
No.
So if I back up, so Brian found the plans for me, and there just is almost no detail.
Yeah. So this also like the one we just did.
Okay, so that's good. So there is the roof basically on the left.
Wow, that's wild. Look at that.
Just really nothing to it.
At least they called out your hips and valleys. The one I just did, they didn't give me any information.
Yeah.
No.
Well, this one's got the engineer stamp. So Terry.
Yeah, so did ours.
Did he?
Oh, yeah.
So one thing that Terry always tried to do, like if I zoom in, is you notice that over this bedroom, there's nowhere to post.
Right, but he's got a double hip there.
So he's got a double. Yep.
Yep.
He called out 1 11 7/8.
Yep.
But of course, with 2x12 rafters, I had to order 14-inch deep to get full
for the plumb cut. Right.
Joe says that's a nice little one. Yes, it is, Joe. In fact, I remember when Kyle and I sheathed that. It was a custom. The guy's name was Ivan. Really nice guy. And we started early the day that we sheathed it. And it was just like ungodly hot. It was going to be upper 90s. For us, that's pretty hot.
Yeah, that's hot here.
Yeah. So we started early, like 6:30. And Ivan shows up with like a big carafe of hot coffee from Starbucks. And we're like, hey, thanks, man. The sentiment's good, but we're just going to get on it and get this thing sheeted so we can go home. And then later, like a couple weeks later, he's like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Hot coffee on a hot day.
Right.
So if you had this set, if you had this and you were going to teach somebody, like we'd assume that the people in our audience are going to be people that, I don't know if they're going to ask us a lot of questions, but when you and I talked, we talked about how you can solve everything if you break it down to triangles.
Right. Yeah.
So looking at this, what triangles would you point out to somebody who's looking at this for the first time?
Well, I would start with the ridges first, and then from there, those are going to kind of show us the triangles. So we have that one main ridge there, and then we notice where, well, speaking on the left side of this plan, we notice where the two hip rafters emanate from. So that dimension out there of 29 feet becomes our main span. So
Okay.
then we would have to pay attention to what our ridge board is and if that's called out. In this case, it is. Looks like you have a double 2x12. So we know that that's 3 inches. So we would just start there very simply without thinking about the hips, jack rafters, or anything. I would want to show them how to solve for the common rafter and then how to determine the height or the top of that ridge from the top of our wall. That's something I like to do. It's a nice home base. It keeps you grounded while you're working across, more complicated roof structures. If you can always know where you're at in relation to the top of your wall, it helps as you get into more detailed things like broken hips and jacks and irregular
So if I
hips
was
and bellies.
making a note, you would start with the hip for the main span. Or I'm sorry, you'd start with the
No,
ridge for the main span.
yeah, I would start with determining those commons. Yeah, the major pitch. And in our case, they're both the same because it's all the same. It's a natural, which makes things a lot easier. Everything's a
Yeah.
45 on this roof, so
Let
that's
me see if I can
nice.
draw some lines. I'm not very good with this PDF Exchange editor. I feel like, okay, I think I can draw a line. So you're looking for, let me draw a circle. You're looking for basically the 29 foot first.
Yeah,
And
Yep.
then you want to solve for common rafters and the ridge height.
correct.
So let's define, just in case people don't know, what is a common rafter?
Common rafter is the rafter that sets the ridge. In the natural roof framing world, the end king common and the common rafter are the same. If you are dealing with irregular pitches, then there's a major pitch and a minor pitch. The major pitch is the pitch that always sets the ridge. It's not necessarily the steeper pitch or the shallower pitch because it can go either way. But finding that highest point, as we're figuring as roof framers and carpenters, framing carpenters, we're figuring the roof, but we're building it in our head. So in order to set the hips or to even figure the hips and the jack rafters, we have to establish the height of that ridge, the length of that ridge, and the length of our rafters that are going to get that ridge actually set. So I kind of work it that way as if I were building it. Then once I figured out the common rafter, I would then look at the length of the ridge and how to determine that. So then I could come up with that. I would note my layout off of, I call it a boss corner. That helps me find layout anywhere on the roof, north, south, east, west, doesn't matter, which would give me the layout on the ridge. And then I would start looking at, my hips, my valleys. Once I get those calculated, then I would start looking at my jacks. In a case like this, with this layout, this one's pretty straightforward. So the rear elevation or the rear of this roof, we have a double or a 2-ply LVL hip on one side and a single on the other. It's still the same length at the center line where we're going to actually make our marks and our cuts. Yes, the one is twice the size of the other one, but the line length is still identical. So essentially, once we figure out one hip rafter, it's the same as 3, because we have 3 full hips here, and then we have a broken hip that's coming down, sharing, looks like probably a gable ridge coming back in.
Let me share. Okay, present. Okay, let me share this because then there'll be some pictures. Add to stage. Okay, so we were looking at the plan, and here is just one image that we had way back. So there's the double hip. So basically, I'm going to try to consolidate this, and then I want to make sure we get to some questions if anybody has any. Is when we're looking at triangles, we're going to say step one is to find the ridge and really define the triangle that is the horizontal line, the run of the rafter, vertical to the ridge, and then we want, let's see if my cursor actually shows up here. I don't think it does. Does it? Oh, that interesting.
That's a great picture. I like that picture.
So that was the old days before the drone. That means I was up on the forks, and Kyle boomed me up.
Yeah, I like how you ran that ridge all the way into your King Uncommon.
So we could diverge a little bit. You notice that we did the little bay roof down at the bottom first. I don't remember why. I have all the pictures for that. I think I probably thought I was going to write an article out of it. But running the ridge through, to me, just simplifies things.
Yeah.
And then I think it looks like I doubled that king for that reason.
Yep.
Can I zoom in on this?
I know I keep trying to do that.
I don't think I can.
It doesn't let me.
Oh, it's the mouse wheel. And then how do I pan? Just like that. Okay.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There we go. So we've got, I'm gonna let me back up. So we've got all 2x12 rafters. It looks like we have the double 2x12 ridge, like the engineer called out, but we lowered it for the air gap and full bearing on the heels. This back hip that we're looking at is doubled because it clear spans. The other hips we were able to post down off of walls. And then this ridge, because the designer always just kind of leaves that stuff up in the air. They just draw lines, and then we have to figure out how.
Yeah.
So that's why that end king is doubled. I think I doubled the kings on both sides, though. The end kings, because it was a double ridge, and I just wanted to keep it simple. And I think I pulled layout off at the center of that.
So knowing that this is a natural roof, your layout stacks. So I'm assuming off that corner, you have the same wall layout, or do you guys not concern yourselves with stacking, wall studs and ceiling joists?
I stack, but I don't care about the roof because with double top plates, we don't have
separate. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure I just laid out right off that end king.
Yeah.
And then whatever that was back. Yeah. So this one was fairly photogenic and a good time of year. So, we pre-built all the soffits on there, landed everything in, have the bird blocks.
Yeah.
So if I can, let me see if I'm actually able to do this. So in terms of triangles, we've got, and so this is a good run through for IBS, is we may want to actually be able to draw across, because I don't think I can draw on this. I thought I could a minute ago. So we have the horizontal, like I think of like a ceiling joist.
Yep.
We go vertical to the ridge, and then the diagonal is the rafter, the hypotenuse.
Right.
So there's a right triangle. Yep. In this case, the bottom right would be 90 degrees. The top is the 612 plumb cut, and on the plates, 612 level cut.
Right.
Then, because it's a regular pitched roof, these hips are in plan view at 45 degrees. So so if you're solving for the hip, the line length of the rafter is easy. We just enter the effective run. So span minus ridge divided by 2 for the run.
Yep.
And I think we show that in a video here in just a minute. But then when you're breaking somebody new into hips, where do you start when it comes to calculating the hip?
So the run of your common rafter, you just plug that into your, like you said, your horizontal run of the triangle and your rise or your vertical plumb line. So you're basically taking that triangle and you're just laying it down flat. So if you took the run of your common rafter to the face of your ridge, and then the run of your end common rafter and king common to the end of the ridge, and they're both the same rafters, you can use those as two of your variables, your run and your rise, and then solve the diagonal, which will then tell you the run of your pitch.
Okay, let me switch back to that other view.
Yeah, the hip isn't the same pitch, right? It's a 17-inch run. So that's where roof framing gets sticky. It depends on how much you do know, like where do you actually start to explain, what's your level of understanding. Yeah, that's a good view there because you can see, did you just draw those two lines? The red ones?
Yeah, I kind of.
Yeah.
Very poorly.
There's a run and a rise, and we're solving for that corner. Yeah, draw it out by the wall plate from the corner over connecting. And then you'll see that hypotenuse better. Yeah.
Okay, that red is not very clear. I'm trying to make these lines thicker, and I just don't know with this thing. There should be, let me see if I can thicken this up a little bit. I'll try to make it obvious. I appreciate everybody's patience. We've never done this before. We don't know what tools we're using.
We have no idea.
No idea. Okay. Width. Okay, we can crank this way up. There we go. Okay, so we have the run. Let's just say, I'm going to delete that if I can. I'm just going to draw a new line. So we've got the ridge here at the top. I think I keep clicking on that. We're just going to make this kind of ugly, but it's going to work. So there's the horizontal, the run of the common rafter.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's equal pitched roof, then that distance has to be the same as this distance.
Correct. Yes.
And logically, then it would be the same as this distance.
Yes.
So in plan view, now we have a right triangle where, since these are the same length legs in a right triangle, then this has to be a 45-degree travel. Correct. In plan view.
Right.
Okay. And then we would need to solve.
So using those, the run, which is the same as you just stated, if you're using, the Construction Master calculator, or even if you aren't, and you're just using, the trig tables that are in whatever scientific calculator, one is run, one is rise, or one is A and one is B. So then when we solve for that, the diagonal becomes the horizontal line under that hip. It has nothing to do with the length, because we're not taking into consideration the slope of that at this point. We're always starting with the run. That's the first thing we want to know. That's like the most important thing, because that sets all these points coming across the roof. Knowing the run of that common rafter, we know the length of this house, corner to corner. We can just take that number, subtract that run twice, and that'll tell us the length of our ridge. So it's very important.
There was an argument years ago. There's a guy named Joe Fusco. You can find, he's since passed.
But, yeah, you told me about him. Yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of a hothead, and he would really get into it with people. He's all over the old Fine Home Building forums too, like way back, 25 years ago now. And he was adamant that the end king common had to be a different length than the other two king commons because of the way he would do his ridges. And so I remember I built this little mock-up after work, just a couple pieces of wood. And I was like, Joe, if the effective run of the common rafters is all the same for that upper roof, if we shorten the ridge by shorten the run by 1/2 the thickness of the ridge, then that means that over here, the ridge has to grow.
Right.
So if it's a 3-inch ridge, it has to grow 1.5 inches so that both of these commons, well, really all of these, right? Then these would all be the same length.
Yeah.
If this came down. So,
Exactly.
We get 6 rafters.
Right.
And I remember because Marshall Gross in his book wrote it out a little differently. And it was like, okay, if we do it this way, then we'll have the double 45 on the hips. Then they just nestle right in there. The shoulders line up. So anyway.
Yeah, that is an age-old argument. I still have that argument myself, but I can assure you that it is the exact same length rafter. I've done it. I've done it plenty of times.
Yeah, and it would have to be.
It has to be. There is no other way. Unless you're going to get into snubbing beveling your ridge and snubbing the end of it to, then you're talking deductions, and that's just personal preference. If you want to do stuff like that, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so I'm going to try to consolidate this a little bit. So we have the 29-foot here on the left is the span. We subtract 3 inches because it's a double 2x12 ridge. Divide by 2.
Yep.
That's the effective run of the rafter. So we enter that as the run. 6-inch pitch.
Yep.
And then we get the diagonal of the rafter. If we click rise, we get the vertical number.
Right.
And now, because go ahead.
Well, with that rise, you have to consider your height above plate and then any additional plating if you're sitting up on anything above the top of the wall to
Let's
get
just
your
assume
top
that our
of-
rafter. Let's just assume the rafters are just string. You know.
Okay. Yeah. So then,
Yeah, I mean, at this point, so I think because it's regular pitched, then the run from the outside wall to the ridge is going to be the same as this rafter back from the corner. And that's what gives us the 45 degrees.
Yeah.
So then it's very easy if, like, I always like to pull layout from my kings. So I would just go off of my king. I'd be like 2 foot, 2 foot, 2, since we're all 2 foot here, 2 foot.
Yep.
The other option would be is to start from the corner and just keep this all super easy. And then you'd have, this would be the same on that side, the same over here, assuming the hips are the same, and the same over here.
Yeah.
And if we calculate them, probably the last 2 over here, longest.
Yep.
Down at the broken hip.
Right.
So then the other triangle that we don't have is once we have the rise from the common rafter, and we can calculate the diagonal here, then we can calculate that slope if we didn't have a calculator with the hip function.
Yeah, I got to figure that out. I never use those.
I only use for the hip.
Yeah, I'm sure it works great. I've never read. I don't read instructions, typical man. So I never really got into all that. I just did it kind of longhand, old school, what made sense to me. And I'm kind of stuck in that, and that's what I teach. I like it though because I'm not completely trusting the technology that's in here. And I know the tables are all correct and everything's perfect, but I like to see the solution come out on both ends. So in other words, I can check my shortest jack rafter, figure my longest, work myself down and make sure, and then work back up and make sure everything's good before I write it down and, I go out in the shop and cut it. So I do want to learn more about that. I just haven't spent the time to.
Yeah.
I watch their videos on Instagram. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I haven't. Let me bring back that other window. There we go. Okay, so what we were just, man, I really wish I could draw on that. I wonder if I could open this in something else. Can I open this in, let me try something real quick, because I think this might help. If I open this file, I might be able to open the file directly in PDF Exchange Editor. Maybe not. Well, you know what? I'm going to open Photoshop then and do that way. Uno momento. And then I'm going to share the same picture of the hip roof with the double hip and then the double kings. And then we can draw on it. I should have had this all ready to go.
Oh, no worries.
It's amazing the skills that we have to learn now that we let me just start a new layer.
Yeah, it's always changing too. New materials, and there's new techniques. Okay,
Photoshop. Here we go. I should have done this to begin with. Add to stage. Okay, so there we are. Now we can zoom in and with something. Oops. Come on now. Got to click into this. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in and let's just draw some of the triangles. Let's see. That we know we have. So what we were just talking about, I'm going to go B for brush. Let me just, actually we want that. We'll just pick red. Come on now.
That is a great picture showing a natural hip. I like it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is here in the Northwest. It seems like we do mostly. Why won't it just give me B?
I don't know why all of ours have to be irregular. It's such a pain. It's like
when I look at your. Oh, I see. Get rid of that. There we go. There we go. Let me shrink that just a little bit. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to try to very crudely draw some triangles. This is going to be pretty bad. So we have vertical, and let's just go this way. So there's one triangle, roughly, right? So there's
Perfect.
the common.
Yeah.
And that would loosely match.
I like this. Yeah.
Look at that.
Perfect. Dialed.
Okay, so there we go. This is why I don't draw.
I think
But
it's
essentially,
awesome.
if those are right triangles,
Mm-hmm.
they're identical. They're exactly the same. Let's just say there's no thickness for anything.
Right.
So 612, they have the same run, the same rise, the same diagonal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to just try to get rid of some of these. So this same rise, well, how do I want to explain this? Let me go back. So since this distance back from the plate, this is going to get, man, I really wish this was in SketchUp because we could rotate in 3D. I'm just terrible at SketchUp.
Yeah, you're fine.
So the run, let me try to redraw that real quick so that it's a little bit more normal. So we've got our king common is this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And our king common is, make sure I'm on the right one. This guy. Right. So those are going to be the same exact length, and their runs or horizontal distance, which would shoot somewhere back here by that post.
Mm-hmm.
Those would all be the same. And because this guy and this guy are the same, they actually follow these as well.
Exactly.
So the runs are all the same, and we're just sliding those triangles back and forth. Yeah. And then to get the hip, we would just basically rise, run now on the horizontal.
Yep.
And there's our 45 underneath the hip.
Right.
Roughly. We can make that a little cleaner.
Yeah.
It would be in there somewhere more like that. Then from that, we have all of our vertical numbers. And so now we have a whole bunch of triangles that are mostly the same. And the last one that then we would solve for would be the hip, which comes all the way, let's say, out to here.
Yeah.
So we're kind of just making a pyramid.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, yeah, roof. That's all roofs are. They're just triangles. And I'm simple, so I take it one ridge at a time. Some of the plans and the roofs that I've cut, it's when you first open the plans, it's very overwhelming. You're like, wow, there's 47 hips and valleys and 22 ridges. So if you just take one at a time and look at it the way we're looking at this photo you took, it gets a lot easier. You just take little bites at it.
Yeah.
A little bit at a time, which leads me to like the overhangs, which is why I like to start there, because if you take care of all that business that happens out there outside the plate line with your cornice work and all that, and you know that that's set and everything is good with all the pitches, you have your plating figured out, your height above plates, then you can really just focus on the triangles because you've already worked that out. And I like to do that graphically. I'll actually draw it. You've shared that as well, Tim. I've seen you do that on your page. A lot of the guys on Instagram do. But you can actually draw that out, figure out your overhangs, make everything line up nice, and then you can move forward, forget all about it, and then just work from the plate lines in, kind of like we're showing here. It works good for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like the more teachers that there are. I'll just briefly explain how I went about framing the roof. Is I did exactly like you said. Let me get rid of all these lines. I just have always set my ridges. That's just the way I was taught. And usually, like with a double ridge, it's going to be probably too heavy for us to sit there and try to hold in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So this upper ridge, we calculated the height and set it on posts, and then we set these rafters to it. So step one was to set the ridge. Step two was to set like 4 sets of rafters just to lock in the ends. Do the same thing on the other side. Yep. But we run this wild.
The end of your ridge.
Yeah. Actually, let me back that up because I actually think I took pictures of that, Kyle and me, for the as I put this. Let me back up. So this rafter went in, located this end, but we ran the other end wild.
Yeah.
And we put the 2 rafters next layout mark back.
Mm-hmm.
Then we held the other, held the other king common right where we wanted it and just marked it to the plumb cut.
Yeah.
cut it off in the air.
Yeah. I used to do the same thing. Yeah.
That just is and then like Joe's comment here a little bit earlier, for this ridge, we just take one of these rafters and slam it up against the double king and just mark
because you're so close. Yeah, it is contagious, Joe. That's funny.
So I'm thinking as we're going through this, Ryan, I'm trying to simplify this for IBS, and I think I'm going to make some notes. Greetings, Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to get really basic and have to describe, like maybe this picture, and I'll try to label it, is in this picture, this is the ridge, that's a ridge. This is a common rafter, and this is a common rafter.
Yep.
Just get rid of those so it's not cluttered. This is a hip rafter. That is a hip rafter. And I would love to be able to get people more involved. There's one more hip rafter in the picture. Where is it?
Right. Yeah, we only have a half an hour. That's the issue.
I know, and we're already past that.
Yeah, we could talk. Yeah, we could talk about this for the entire weekend. Barely scratch the surface.
Yeah. So I'm thinking.
I do like this though. Calling out the parts of the roof and maybe the explanation as to what each one is. I don't know if we'll have enough time to really explain how to actually.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That's going to be too time consuming.
I mean, you could spend a half an hour on a common rafter, really.
So maybe then let me see if I can do this very quickly, because Photoshop seems to be a good way to do this. Let me just put this over, and we'll add another picture. I'll zoom out. So there's just a close up at the other side. Now here's something that I do that's not right, and I don't think it's wrong. Is I didn't calculate anything from the plates. I calculated it from the outside of the wall sheathing, because then I could butt my rafters right into the soffit framing, because the soffits were all pre-framed.
Yeah. And
so sometimes that gets people. But one of the things that I think is important for people to know.
So I do the same thing. The overhang is a separate. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, specifically, let me just create a new layer here. Is right down here. So basically I would have used 29'1" to start my calculations, because I'm adding a 1/2 inch of sheathing to the outside of each side of the.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah. So I was assuming 29 feet was face of wall sheathing. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
However, the plan is called out. Yeah. Typically, our numbers include, they'll call it a 6-inch wall. So they're saying a 2x6 with 7/16 or 1/2 inch sheathing on it. So
when I took AutoCAD back in high school, like 94, 95, that was the big debate in class. And of course, none of us knew. We were just students. Right. But your walls are 3.5, 5.5, but with sheathing, which was just coming in, double wall construction.
Yeah.
Then it was like, do we add that? And of course, you do whatever you want. For us, because we pre-framed the soffits, we had that 2x4 nailed to the plates. Now we could just butt our jacks, nail them at the ridge, and slide them over.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like having an extra guy down there.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think we're going to be able to get into this in the class, but essentially what I circled here, that line of sheathing, then when we cut our hip, it has to hit exactly that spot too.
Correct. Yep.
And then you can see people always like to nitpick us on that, because I always cut everything a quarter short for the soffits. I want to make sure it fits.
That's my biggest secret that I don't tell anyone, because they say, how are you cutting these roofs and everything just fits? Well, we cut all the ceiling joists a quarter inch short so we can move because we frame on top of the ceiling. They call it an energy heel here.
Yeah.
So we add the 1.5 inch rim board, whatever the ceiling is. So that gives us a 1/2 inch of play to move everything around and get it perfect again when we go roll the ceiling joist. Because everyone's like, oh, everything grows. If you cut it 16 feet, it's not 16 feet. Like, okay, whatever. But we control everything as carpenters.
Yeah.
So it's if you do everything with a purpose, then you can get good results. That's right. That's a great picture. I love that.
So those are those original Keens that were just clown shoes.
Yeah, this was
like the first. first iteration, and it was like, hey, they're comfortable, but by putting the safety toe on the outside, as opposed to most manufacturers shave the last of the boot back.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see how we framed the.
Got a double ridge down low too. It looks like.
Yeah, that was just over a section of the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun house. I mean, easy.
That's a perfect picture to explain plan view. That's exactly.
So that's what I was. That's what I was thinking for the presentation is plan view. So horizontally, like here it represents the outside of the wall plates.
Mm-hmm.
So our number actually is right to there.
Correct.
And then got to measure, half the thickness of the ridge back.
Yep.
But the same exact thing that we're talking about for the Kings is the same as this.
Yep.
There's just another triangle.
Exactly.
And then if we rotated it on the side like we had it, we can add a vertical number to that, get another triangle, and that gives us our wall sheathing.
Yep.
Or our roof sheathing.
Roof sheathing. Yep.
Easy for me to say, which I think actually, if I just turn these off, yeah. So then to figure out roof sheathing, come on now. We can just come that number and connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this would be a right triangle.
Yeah.
Right
triangle math. Yeah. It'll get you through 9% of any roof framing scenario that I've found.
Okay, let me erase those. Yeah, so it's really just starting with the triangles that you can solve for first, or the ones you choose to first, and then working from there. And then there would be like roughly the horizontal, and I'll just go like this. There's another triangle for the hip.
Right.
Try to make that 90. That's where Sim, when he would do his develop stuff, and it was that whole what did he call that? It was like the Timber Framers Guild thing. I remember his boys, they all would essentially draw the exploded. So you have the roof together. Now we just explode it and lay each piece on its side. And that's what looks so complicated until you start to see each of the triangles. If we unfolded this like it was made out of paper.
Yeah.
Which would be a really cool demonstration. I'm just really bad with folding stuff. We should do that with like
would be awesome.
Piece of plywood and a couple piano hinges.
Yep. Yeah, because that's essentially all a plan view drawing is, right? There's no dimension to it. You're taking those triangles and you're laying them down. Like the old timber framers with loft lines, right? They could snap the whole roof out on the floor and then turn that into a 3-dimensional, roof structure, which is exactly what a plan view drawing is. It's the same idea.
So I think for the sake of the thing, and then I think we should get to some questions since you got a jet here in 20 minutes. I'll just make up a list of the triangles and I'll send it over to you, and then we'll either have pictures that go along with them, or we can use some of this, and I can do a little bit more professional job of drawing it. I just wish I was better in SketchUp, but
I don't use it. Yeah, I wish I was better at a lot of things.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, let's get to some questions. Let me stop presenting this since it is here. Okay, so yeah, see, this is better than Instagram Live because we got a little bit more people than Instagram Live, but we can actually see the questions and respond to them. They don't go away.
How can I join this? It says join the chat.
Who wants to join?
Me. I have to connect to my YouTube. Well, whatever. They're watching. I
don't
have to. Yeah,
can you see it on the screen, though, here on the right?
Yeah, I see it there.
Okay. I'll start at the top. So it looks like Kalen, he had a question this morning. Cutting rafters, why it's not working for him. All right, Kalen, you got to be more specific.
Right.
Now's your chance. Jump in.
Yeah.
And then I'll scroll down. I'm not sure if you can scroll on your end.
Yep.
Okay.
Let the heckling begin, our Canadian brother.
Good old Joe Canning. Joe's been heckling me since the forums in like 2010.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, you know what's funny? Actually, I'll tell a really quick story. So this house that we were just looking at pictures, 2013, summer of 2013, we had the Awesome Framers Instagram account for just a little bit, but it was just a joke. Joe, I think, was the only one that followed us in my family and friends here. So I bet if you go all the way back, Joe's literally been heckling on Instagram since the very beginning.
That's awesome.
But it's when Instagram first started doing video, and so we have some like video from this house. It's very poorly done.
It was only photos in the beginning?
It was only photos at the beginning.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of newer to that Yeah.
And we didn't have any kind of way to edit. So you would like literally record a clip. In fact, I'm going to find one and post it in a story this afternoon because I still remember it. And my wife just thought it was the dumbest thing because it was just like my eye from different angles.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to scroll up because I found a couple comments here. For jacks, let's see. Subtract 14.5 for 16-inch, subtract the diagonal of 45. So I think one thing that would be good to mention to those that are watching, you use the Construction Master Pro Trig.
I do.
I've got the same in my bags, but I've got the desktop version here that has just been next to my computer for years.
Yep. Does that have the trig functions on it?
Doesn't. Nope.
No.
Oh yes, it does. Yeah, it's on the right hand side.
Yep.
Same one.
Yep.
So I never used the jack function with the exception of figuring the jack difference as a way just to check myself. I still do it long form. And then I jump into that, or I use build calc just to. Oh, can I find that picture? So
most
how do you?
Guys, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I always have bad timing.
So do I. Ask my wife. Most guys don't realize what the actual information that's on a framing square. So if you're a framing carpenter using an actual framing square, those common differences are actually called out on almost every one that I own. Not all of them, but most of them. And that's only true with a natural roof. So if you have the same pitch, if you go over to, say it's a 612, look under the 6-inch line, it's going to tell you what your common difference is at your on-center spacing. I'll have 16-inch spacing, 24-inch spacing, and there's going to be a number there. But you can do the same thing with the calculator, and you could just step it off. You know, when I started cutting roofs, I never used the calculator. I did everything with the steel square. And I'm glad I did. I still do maybe one a year. I'll run that way. It's very slow now, but it works. It's a good way to do it. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to try to show you something here. And then let's just see. If anybody has any questions, if you could throw them down at the bottom of the chat, and we'll get to those in just a moment. I found these pictures. So I was telling you about the guy, Ken Drake, that used to post on JLC. And it was like the first time any of us ever saw somebody that could. Let me do this. Okay, present. It was the first time anybody had ever seen that somebody actually was pre-cutting roofs. So where's Photoshop? So here is, I'm pretty sure it was Ken that sent this. I'm going to move this off to the side. Nope, I got to leave it there. I'm going to try to zoom in. This is very poor resolution because this is literally from like 2002. So this was his answer to my question on, let's see. There we go. This was the answer to my question about figuring out bird blocks that sit at 90 degrees. And so here's all the longhand trigonometry.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I've got like 4 other pictures too. And, this is for like split pitch, not 90 degrees, like an octagon. And I would run through that. But so maybe a drawing like this is what we should work on because there's all of our triangles.
Yep.
So if I go, this is bird block math. Let me drag that to the very top. So this is, I think, I appreciate everybody's patience because we really are just trying to figure out how to, and I'm going to go with yellow. I think that might show up a little bit better. So maybe I'll work on just the SketchUp drawing because even I can do that, is once you have this number and you have the angle of the roof, you can calculate the height, and then you're just a matter of connecting dots.
Exactly.
And making each triangle. And that's how we can get to trigonometry or just use the Construction Master and be like, here's the rise run.
Yeah.
Which we're supposed to be able to post 3-minute reels now. I can't because that video that I posted for IBS only posted half of it. It was going to show how to do that.
On Instagram?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a hack for that. You can share it as a post and it can be.
Yeah, I'd probably just split it up and doing that.
It'll automatically share it as a reel. No, I mean if you use your editor and you have like a 6-minute video and you go to Instagram to share it, just select post, not reel. It'll share it and it'll dump it into reels automatically. I just figured that out.
So here's something that's interesting. I follow the CEO on Instagram, and he said they won't share anything longer than the 3 minutes, any video, with anyone who doesn't follow you.
Oh, okay.
So like, which might not be a big deal. You might just want it there and pin it, but
right
for reach. Okay, so I want to try to get to a couple of these questions. Here's a question, Ryan. Let me back up a little bit. Let's go all the way up to at 127. Okay, I don't think that's a question. He's just going through the math. San Juan Island. Nice. Friday Harbor. Used to be a guy up there that posted a lot on JLC about 20 years ago. I don't think either of us can. Hey, Paul Garrick, I don't know that either of us can recommend a good architect or engineer because don't know where he's from.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, here's a good question Kyle's got. Can I pin this?
Is the height above?
Hey, look at that.
Always the same for the hip. Yeah. That is a good
question. How you can? That's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Answer it, Ryan. Answer it. You have 5 seconds.
5. Yes and no. Depends on if you're backing your shoulders of your hip. Otherwise, there's a deduction. But it is very close to the same height above plate. How's that for an answer? It's true.
So if that's true, let me turn off these layers. So height above plate.
It depends on where you're going to put your bird. Are you going to cut your bird's mouth square and just pull it in tight to the outside corner? Are you going to bevel your bird's mouth? Are you going to mark, like you said earlier, half the thickness? Because at that point, that top view you had looking down shows that. That was a perfect view. When we were looking straight down at the hip, you had the actual corner of the building drawn. And at that point, where was it? Yeah, right there. Yeah, right there. So the height above the plate is exactly the same where you have those two lines, perpendicular lines coming back. Yeah, you can see it. That's a great shot. You would have to lay out your height above plate there.
And right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, which roughly lines up with that. So that would be my answer is going back to, got too many drawings, is the birds or the height above plate. Let me turn this guy. I just created a new layer just for this. Okay, so height above plate, for those that don't know, is the vertical distance really at the outside of the wall. In this case, for me, it was wall sheathing, but most of the time, you can actually see the mark right there on the top of that rafter. So then the question is that I would say that, yes, it is always the same on the hip.
Only with natural roofs, though.
Only with natural roof, yeah.
Yeah, because irregulars, with equal overhangs, it won't sit on the corner. So there's a whole other conversation there.
So that's why you can kind of see if I zoom in.
That's a good illustration.
Boy, I wish it was higher resolution. I probably have these files somewhere, but you can see. So the hip rafter length is the outside corner. It's over here,
right?
And then I always draw my plumb line straight down, which would be probably somewhere. It looks like I have a mark there, there, and then we go parallel back half the thickness of the hip, and that gets us right there.
Yep.
And then I just square cut. I don't use saws with bevels to go both ways.
Yeah, I don't either.
Stop it.
Yeah.
And then that connects the dot to right there and right there.
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent.
Turns out we actually had a couple of good pictures that showed it.
That's a great picture.
Yeah, I'll have to dig up one that, well, one of these days we'll go live again.
Yeah.
Try to get people. I mean, we don't know what we're doing here. Okay, how about Kaylin's comment there at 140? Let's see, I can pin that. You can help us out with this, Ryan. We should see how fast Ryan can calculate this. Which one was wrong, Kaylin? Let's see. He ended up guessing and checking, wound up with 29-degree plumb cut.
Not fit
about 136 inch.
Inch and 3/4 by 16 rafter.
It's a long rafter. That must be a very long rafter.
Yeah, I mean, what's the pitch?
Yeah, what's the pitch? And I'll see if it comes up in the comment down below. Yeah, while you're Kaylin, can you let us know what's your pitch? Did we miss it? And I hope I'm saying your name right. Oh, looking for an engineer in the Seattle area or Pacific Northwest. Hey, Paul, go ahead and email me. Don't tell anybody, but my email is tim@awesomeframers.com. Could have guessed that one. So roughly 812.
Yeah, 8 1/16. And my diagonal is 142 5/8. So he's pretty close. Are you subtracting half the thickness of the ridge? So if you're 3.5 inches, you're taking 1 3/4 inches. So you're 20 feet. Divide that in half. It's going to give you 10 feet minus 1 3/4 inches. Gives you 9 foot 10 1/4. That's your run. You're telling us that your rise is 79 3/4. The diagonal would be 142 5/8.
That's what I got.
11 foot 10 5/8. So I think you're doing something wrong with your deduction. So how far off are you? Oh, I got to do it all over again. What did I say? 142 5/8. Yeah.
Yep.
So you're pretty close. What is that? 1 7/16 inches. So we're thinking it's an 812, and that's diagonal.
Joe's probably got it right.
Did you pitch the run? So 1 3/16 inches and run. What Joe say? Looks like the height above plate is wrong to the height. Yeah, that's could be it too. See, we don't have enough information really.
How many times, Ryan, and probably 0 for you, do you know how many times I have gone and set a ridge and we went to set the first rafter and we forgot to adjust the ridge up for the height above plate?
Oh yeah, I've done, yes. You know what I do a lot is when I'm actually in the field, I'll forget the additional plating on the King Uncommon side in an irregular pitch. So we'll get the ridge up and then we go try to set the uncommon to get everything kind of going, and everyone's like, what is going on? I'm like, oh yeah, we have to add another plate. I totally forgot. Yeah. So now we got 2 hips kind of nailed, and now we're sawzalling and pulling nails. It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Yep.
Or I've cut the hip plumb cut, a common plumb cut.
Oh yeah. 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 I like to cut when I'm doing the irregular roofs. I carry adjustable, the old Stanley speed squares, so you can set the pitch, and I'll buzz the plumb cuts at an 812, and then I'll grab my 12-12 tail pattern. So I'll have an 812 plumb cut and a 12-12 tail, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the bevels are backwards. Yeah. I've done it all. Yep. I've made
So
mistakes.
I'm trying to figure out for,
yeah,
I know. And we've learned that the more nails we put in something, the more likely it is to be wrong.
Oh, for sure.
We're trying to be better about just get it tacked and then let's check.
Yeah.
Forgot the height off the ridge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would watch the show that it's just like, we should just start a subscriber account. People have to pay to watch us, but the stuff that they watch, it's the stuff we won't show, and we won't show on our curated Instagram where it's all pretty. We just show all the ugly stuff on a subscription. See who spends the money. Like, I subscribe for the mistakes. Yes,
right.
I did.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how to help Kaylin here. If there's something obvious. Because I feel like there's a mistake being made. I guess my question, Kaylin, is if it's an 812, we shouldn't need that rise number unless we calculate it.
Right.
Because if it's 20 feet, I always go the 20-foot span minus the 3.5, and then I divide by 2.
Yeah.
So if that's my run 8-inch pitch, my diagonal is 142 1/8.
Yeah, I got 118 1/4 for my run. He's saying he hit 116 1/2.
Yeah, I've got 118 1/4 for the run.
Yeah, he's He's saying 116.5. So he's short.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I don't know.
Yeah, 20 foot minus 3.5 inch ridge.
Are you still on here, Kalen? Yeah, 142 and 5/8. That or we're missing something.
Yeah. So here, I'm just going to throw this on here while I think that shows up while Kalen jumps on. There is the.
I've done that too, Joe. More times than I could count. That's funny. Yeah, that's a great picture.
Yeah, so that was his bird block math. You could see it in the background. Took a picture.
Awesome.
We had to do that all with like a digital SLR back in the day because none of us had cell phone. Okay, Paul, I got your email. I'll respond. Short answer is I don't know, but we're going to be starting work with an engineer, I believe, that's down in Packwood. But yeah, this was so when we would do we had a house plan we kept doing that had like half octagon, like a breakfast nook that jutted off the back, and then so did the master bedroom. And it would take all day because we would sit there and let me see. The way I was taught. Okay. Can't you brush? Okay, can I do it now? There we go. Let me just create a new layer. I'm really good at this. Okay. The way I was taught is that we would, since everything we did, we had open soffits, all of our bird blocks were square to the roof pitch, so square to the tail, is we would essentially use our speed square from the corner of the plate and just draw a line. And then we'd snap a line through. So that would be this line here.
Did you see Kalen's new comment?
No. Okay.
That's what he's doing. Exactly. Crimson Acres, yeah. So he's taking the ridge off, the entire ridge from the center line of the span instead of just half of it. That's why he's just a little short. So that should answer that for you. So 10 feet minus 3.5 isn't correct. You'd be the 10 feet minus half of 3.5, which would be your 1 3/4 inches. And then you would want to use that as your run, which would be 118 1/4. And then you should be good to go.
Yeah.
But at that point, if you already cut a bunch, just pack the ridge out a little bit so you don't have to waste all the rafters.
See, that was worth the price of admission, Kalen. I wish, Ryan, so the guy that taught me to frame, he was pretty much self-taught on the roof. And so like we would just draw 45s over the top of a hip rafter. And it's like, well, it's not technically 45 degrees because once the saw goes through it.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, your roof sheathing would be 45. And so there was lots of little things. They all look fine. We figured it out.
Yeah.
But what I never got a chance to work with is somebody who just stacks roofs, because I'm convinced that the order that you stack things, like the math can be right on the money, the framing can be right on the money, the cutting can be right on the money, but putting them together in the wrong order can make things not fit.
100% true.
Okay, good.
Yep.
that's
100% true.
Feel better.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that just happened to me yesterday with the broken hip. It seemed to be very long, and I mean like 1 inch long, and I knew it wasn't. I checked it, pulled the span. Of course, it's freezing cold, blowing. It's snow, ice everywhere, and I was getting irritated. So I asked the one carpenter. I said, "Did you put the plates on that uncommon side?" Yeah, I said, "Just snap a line because I don't see a line. They just nailed the 2x4 down." Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. So I went over. I got down on my knees and I sighted it, and I said, "No, you didn't. Like that's not straight." So once I figured that out, it was the end of the ridge had to come down enough. So the span was essentially a little small. So we were able to get it where it was, which brought the ridge down, and then the broken hip, everything was fine. But yeah, for about 15 minutes, I was like, what is going on? This is right. That's right. We've checked this. But had we set that upper ridge first, which to speak on what you're saying, when we did the smaller ridge, that would have shown us that same problem, but we would have known where to look because of the order that we would have stacked it. So, yeah, that's definitely true. And I think a lot about that with every roof. especially the cut and ship packages. I have to kind of go through that, and I'll send an order of operations the way I would do it, how it's intended to go together, just to help them succeed. Because you could start wherever, but you brought up a really good point. That's funny. I've never heard anyone else say that before.
Well, like there'd be times where I'm like, no, we did it right. Like the math is good. Things are checked out.
Everything's straight. Why is this not fitting? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's wood. It's not perfect.
Well, yeah, that would be worthy of its own discussion, I think. Let me.
Kalen, you are not an idiot.
No.
Oh, crap. You got it, man.
Yeah, you're definitely not an idiot. It's like how many times? If you've done that 1,000 times, you're still not an idiot.
Oh,
this stuff is. There's just so much to keep track of.
Yeah, I make mistakes every day. Always learning. That's the fun of it.
It is the fun of it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're old enough that you are like Joe's comment, your comment, mine. I think there's probably a few more in here. I still don't like to make mistakes, but I just recognize, like, the younger guy that works with it. Well, both Kyle and Jordan, they'll get really get on themselves sometimes when they make a mistake, and I'm like, I'm not getting on you. It's part of it. I remember that too at the beginning where I really took it badly when I blew it, and now I'm just so used to blowing it.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yep. Me too. I've invented mistakes that aren't even possible.
Yeah.
So, if you want to be good, you have to be willing to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I told a kid that last year at JLC, and he's a great little roof cutter. He was showing me all these pictures, and he's like, "What's the secret?" I'm like, "You got to make all the mistakes I did if you want to do what I'm doing." And he was like, "That's so profound." I'm like, "Well, it's true. I've been doing this 25 years. Like, you're still wet behind the ears. Don't worry, you'll be amazing someday. You just have a lot of mistakes to do."
I saw this Instagram video, and it was a reel of some guys pitching. These were young guys, probably late teens. And these guys are throwing about 99, 100 miles an hour. And every time they would throw, and I'm just like, good Lord, the coach he's like, okay, your aim's good, but you're rotating a little too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's almost the equivalent. Like they're going to pitch that thing thousands of times.
Yeah.
To get where they're good at it. Well, it's got to be the same with us too, or the musical instrument. You just got to
absolutely
somebody,
put the reps in, and not be lazy. That's the other problem. We're in a day and age now. Like you talk about these forums and all that. I even miss that. These kids, they can go on YouTube. There's an app for things. Like, you have to put time into certain things to understand them before you're going to be, where you want to be. You can't download a how to play guitar app and go home, but get a guitar and be good at it. You got to put the time in, and that's true. I think that's true with all the trades, because you're working with your hands, your brain and your hands. So there's really no shortcut there.
Well, and your post the other day too about when you're, then the LVL's cupped.
Yeah.
So now you got to make adjustments. We had one house, and I remember Jason that worked with me at the time. I think this was 2002. I drive by the house all the time. We had an 18-inch LVL ridge, an 18-inch. I don't ever order single ply 18-inch because it's going to cup. We have the forklift, so I want beams. I don't want to set individual pieces. And sure enough, we had a huge cup, and on that side, all the common rafters, Jason had to eyeball a curve to the plumb cut. It was 12-12, so it was a pretty long cut on a 2x12. And he was so proud of himself because he eyeballed that slight radius, and so they were nice and tight at the ridge.
Yeah.
But on the other side, we had a nice big 1/4-inch gap because it was a straight cut, and the ridge was cupped the opposite way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, I hate that. Yeah. That's, especially in LVL. A lot of times if I have a ridge that's cupped pretty bad and I don't have the option of replacing it or getting another one in time, I'll run my saw down the center line where it's cupped worse, and I'll just take 2 passes, maybe half the depth of the ridge thickness. So when we get it out there, we actually have the opportunity to kind of drive it flat. It works sometimes not, but is it worth doing? Done? Probably not. I do it anyways.
So we've had a couple of those where from the cupped side, we put one of the big Simpson screws right to the center of the plumb cut on the rafter.
Mm-hmm.
And that big washer head on that screw pulled it nice and tight.
Drew it right in. Yeah.
And then we're like so proud of ourselves. We're like, okay, it wasn't pretty. We did our best. Right. And those screws are so fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's a good picture there. That's an irregular roof. That's a whole different ball game.
That is, yeah. What were the slopes there?
Oh, I don't remember. 8s and 10s, maybe something like that. That looks pretty shallow. Maybe a 6 and a 10 or 6 and an 8. I don't
We
know.
did a lot of 6 and 8s and 8 and 10s.
Yeah. Well, this one actually it's behind me here. The one we just did. The drawings are terrible. They had like 5.5 12s and 6 12s. Like, why don't I didn't understand. I made it all the same. I just made the whole roof natural. It wasn't worth calling the architect. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Don't know
That's a good, that would be its own topic. I'm flexible because my dad runs the company, well, he's retired now,
right.
but I would just know what dad wanted to do. Like I always lowered the 6 and 8s to 5s and 7s because then the roofers didn't upcharge for an 812.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can tell from the street if it's 5 and 7 or 6 and 8.
Yeah, just the framer. Yep.
So my brother, even now, when he texts me, he's like, "Hey, Angela's working on the roofing bid. What are actually the pitches?" he knows I'm going to simplify it.
Yeah, that's great.
Off the back of the house, what do I need a 10-12 landing into a 5-12 for? Just make them both 5-12s.
Yeah.
Nobody sees it. So that's a good question. What's the most helpful thing you want your apprentices to do?
Yeah, that is a good question. We do more of, definitely not our apprentices. I would say pay attention, listen, and ask meaningful questions. Don't ask me the same question, 2 days in a row, because that just tells me that when I talk, you don't want to hear me. Or if you honestly just forgot, that's fine. I'll give you 3 tries. But if you ask me the same thing over and over and over and you're not improving, that's where, that can be frustrating. But be on time, ask good questions, try hard. That seems to be like a dying thing these days.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like I worked so hard as an 18-year-old compared to what are the 18-year-olds now. I don't want to sound like the old guy, but it's just a different world.
Yeah, it's true. When I was growing up, I'd come out after school. So the guys that could drive, they were already there. They're like 18.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, okay, Jake can do this. And he's trying to get better. I want to try to get better. And then eventually you start racing.
Friendly competition.
Friendly competition. Yep. And then you learn that it's not really about how fast you work, but about not making mistakes. The guy that made the fewest mistakes was the one that won pretty much every time.
Right.
And then the guy that taught me, he just was at an age where he didn't care if he won or lost. So he would just cheat. So he'd take your studs, unplug your saw,
right.
Do whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like we came up very similar with the people I worked with too. Yeah, it was good times for sure. They still are. I still love framing. I don't know why, but I think I had figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up already. Never happened.
Did you start like right out of high school or?
Yeah. So, where I grew up, a little town I grew up in, my neighbor, we were good friends. His father was a framing contractor. So, yeah, we were working for him when we were in middle school, in the summers picking up scrap. And so it just kind of, went hand in hand. And then I did the college thing, and on breaks and stuff, I would go back and work, and kind of stuck.
And here you are.
Joe is so old, he remembers, because I still have some cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I remember mowing the lawns in high school to Pearl Jam's first album, and I only listened to the A side because that's how long it took to mow the lawns. I had every song memorized.
I love that question from Daniel. That's not an easy one to answer in a few minutes because I actually have to get myself in gear here relatively soon.
Yeah, and the question itself, what's the best method?
Oh, show that picture. That's in there. That's in the drive. The one of how I have the different tails. He's asking about lining. There you go. Right there. That's the best way that I know of. This isn't a model, but you could draw this on a sheet of plywood or a piece of paper. You could do it mathematically too, but we're all visual learners and builders, So I like to draw it out. But yeah, that's an easy way to do it. And you don't even need a calculator to do that. You can draw all that out with a framing square and a pencil. You just need a plumb line and a level line. Pull your projection, your overhang over, mark where your plate line is, draw in your fascia, pick where you want to plane to. In my case, I like the center of fascia, but if it's the outside, you hold your square on 12 there and make a mark at whatever your pitch is, 3 and a 12, and then just connect those dots, draw in the profile of the rafter.
Say that again. I'll try to draw it as you do it.
We'd start with the overhang projection, just a level line, like basically right at the bottom of the soffit, straight in. Yep. And then I would draw the fascia in.
Oops. So, like, and you're saying center line?
Yep, and that's fine. And then a plumb line right at the plate line. And I would run that wild. Yeah, way up. Yep, just like so. And then at the top of the fascia, which is where the top of the rafter planes, if you could draw a framing square in here, Tim, just draw one long.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah.
There's a framing square.
Yeah. You could just hold your 12 on your square at that plane point at the fascia, and then over on the blade side of the square, you would just mark whatever your pitch is. 612, 712. In his case, I think he said a 312 and a 1212. So another important thing to note, you're always going to plate up the steeper pitch. Always, always, always.
And that's because, you know, for something that's similar back here, let's just say that this was the same line wild. The steeper pitch just comes shooting way out there.
Right.
And so this distance naturally has to just, there's just going to be more room underneath it.
Yeah, it takes off a lot quicker. Yeah. Yep. I've covered that. If you go through my Instagram, if you go looking back, you'll see I've kind of gotten into detail about that.
Yeah, I get this question quite a bit, and I never know what to. I always tell people, it's like ask around to builders and lumber yards, like who's out there doing framing, and then go see what they're doing, and then talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's not even a lot of people advertising anymore around here. As far as, you know, hiring a 8-track.
160 inches of snow. Good Lord. Well, let's see here. I'm going to stop sharing that way. Well, yeah, I knew we'd go long, but you wanted to keep it an hour because you got to bring home dinner to the family.
I got to go pick up dinner in 3 minutes, but it's only maybe a 5-10 minute ride from the shop. So we're fine.
You can do it in 3 minutes.
Oh, not at all.
Do you have a preference as to who wins in the Super Bowl tomorrow?
My team's not in the Super Bowl tomorrow. I don't want to talk about it.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. I haven't watched Super Bowl.
I don't want to see. I definitely don't want to see the Chiefs win. I will say that.
Yeah.
Don't want to see.
I don't follow football at all. So tomorrow, I'm thinking I might turn it on, but I guarantee you I won't. I'll probably just be reading. Sunday nights to me are a very sacred thing in the sense that I won't do anything social. I won't go anywhere. Sunday night is to relax and get ready for the week.
I am exactly the same.
I'm just like, nope.
Yep, I'm a homebody when it comes to that, for sure.
Kind of get psyched up for the week.
Yeah.
Well, so I'll work on a couple drawings, Ryan, and then we'll just.
Yeah, we got a couple weeks yet before we.
It's going to be. I think if we can get the slides, then that will force us to stay on the topic of whatever's on the slide.
True.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know how well this is going to go over there. I feel like the stage over at the Huber booth is doesn't really lend itself to this type of thing because, like some of the comments here, you almost just want it JLC style where it's very close. There's seats and people can you can just talk and it's you don't need microphones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we should plug this. So if anybody's going to be at the International Builder Show, Ryan and I are going to be talking about roof framing in whatever form that takes. Let me bring up the schedule here in the Huber booth. And that is 1:30 on Wednesday of IBS. Joe, make sure that you're there. I require you to be there, because then we know that there will be one person there besides my wife, who's going to be so bored. And then let's plug JLC, because you're doing JLC.
JLC. So, you're going to ask me the schedule? I wouldn't even.
No, okay. Definitely not going to do that. But in broad outlines, at JLC in Providence in March, you're going to be doing like a full day thing on Thursday, a classroom setting?
Got classroom, 3-hour classroom session. And then I think 4 demonstrations at the Builders Workshop with Mike Slogat. So it should be fun. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
It's going to be busy.
Yeah, last year I didn't do a good job. That was my first time to JLC Live back east. We've always been to Vegas about 25 years ago, and then it would alternate between Portland, Oregon, and Seattle.
And they're not doing those anymore, right?
Not out west, no.
Yeah.
Attendance just kept dropping. Yeah. But Providence, it was definitely worth it. I got the hotel, now I just need to book airfare, and we're locked in. I think my wife's going to come back. I really wanted to meet Luke from Acrobus, his wife Tiana.
Nice.
They're both like pseudo millennials that are trying to say that they're not pseudo millennials. So they're going to get along famously.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Crimson Acres Homestead ticket for IBS, so you can get those for free. I would watch Sashko. They usually will put a link in their description or their bio on Instagram. But basically all the different booths can offer them for free, and that gives you access to everything but the paid classes, which none of us go to.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what they are. But for all this stuff on the show floor, like Ryan and me, I'll be up there with Aaron from Big Dog Construction and Steve, Basic. Brian and I've got something to do over at LP. We'll be at PWT talking about treated LVL. I mean, this is going to be a busy show. And then Thursday, we kind of crash. We try to get around to actually see the show.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it'll be fun. 15
Oh,
days.
yeah, Joe.
Yeah, wow.
Joe's on stage too. Joe, plug your thing there. I forgot you had something going too. Yeah, I want to try to get a few people to at least be in the audience with us.
I'm sure we'll have some people there.
And if not, so I'll tell you a real quick story. A couple years back, Huber invited Matt Bangswood and me to come down to PCBC, which was like a little mini IBS down in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And the reason was they had rented a big enough space that they were going to bring in their Prove It trailer. But then they got a call saying, oh, that won't fit in the building. And they're like, now what? So we were going to do some basic how to flash windows and that kind of thing. So get there early and build a stage. Literally nobody came. Nobody. And we're just like, should we start? And so what we ended up doing, because Steve was there and Peter, we ended up trying to just film kind of or record a podcast, and we just talked. But it was a little awkward. So we're like, that one's not worth going to.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
We can handle the awkward moment. Awesome, man. I sure appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I got to sign off. I do, unfortunately, have to leave, or I'd sit here all night and talk about this with you.
Yeah, we'll do it next time. We'll just plan time where we're like both snowed in and got nothing better to do.
Love to do it.
Cool. Yeah, sweet.
Awesome everybody.
Man. Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, thanks for following along, everybody. All 1 hour and 18 minutes.
Later.
See ya.